So I'm going to start with the end and
Right.
ask you to sum up your first 12 months in charge at United. Review yourself.
Right. Well, I think in a funny sort of way, it's gone as we anticipated it would. We didn't think the first year was going to be easy because we had difficult things to do. But I think, the club is bigger than, until you actually arrive in the club, it's bigger than you think, And the scrutiny is bigger than you anticipate because you get your school report at the end of every day instead of at the end of every term. I used to get a clip round here once every term by my mother, but now I get a clip round here every day by the press. So those things are sort of slightly, I suppose unanticipated or underestimated. But I think broadly where we are, which I know is a difficult place, and people are not very happy about it at the moment, which is why I'm quite unpopular. It is where I didn't expect in a year of change that we'd be winning the Premier League. Honestly.
Are you finding it hard, the scrutiny, the attention, the criticism?
Well, I used to enjoy picking a newspaper up in the morning, having a cup of coffee and a croissant, which it's not quite so enjoyable anymore. But I think the way, we've all got our sensitivities, and it isn't pleasant to read some of the press coverage. But the way I get through it is that I believe what we're doing is the right thing, and I believe what we're doing has to be done to get United back to where United should be, which are the winning, silverware and winning trophies and things like that. And we have to go through this. If you don't like where United have been for the last 12 seasons since Sir Alex retired, then I think, ergo, you have to accept there has to be a period of change, otherwise it's just going to continue. And change is always uncomfortable and unpleasant at times, and that's sort of where we are at the moment, unfortunately.
Do you understand why the fans are angry? Obviously, yesterday they protested at the Arsenal match. Do you understand where it comes from?
Yeah, I think. Yeah, well, I'm a fan as well, remember. So fans are not going to be happy languishing down at the bottom in the bottom half of the table. And yeah, I get that, and I sympathise, but I didn't think this year was going to be a walk in the park. It was always going to be difficult. And if you look at the squad that Ruben's got available, he's only got half a squad, honestly.
You just said that you're a fan. As a fan, not as an owner, when you go and watch the games, and you have been watching the last 6 or 7 months, what do you make of the performances?
Well, I've seen the performances under two. So I don't know whether you're asking me about the previous.
Well,
coach.
under Eric and under Ruben now.
Yeah, well, obviously under Eric it was erratic. I think is the best word I'd use. There was some great when we won the FA Cup against Man City, they all turned up and they played like they were in a cup final, and then at other times, Crystal Palace or whatever, they didn't show up. Under Ruben, what we've seen, I think, is it was difficult at the beginning, and I sort of get that. But then I think we've seen progress, and I think some of the players that we bought in the summer, you've seen them settle. It's quite tough, isn't it? You spent your life playing there. It's not an easy league to play in, and there's a lot of scrutiny, and it's a tough. Look how Xerxes got knocked about. Yesterday in the first half, he really got knocked about, didn't he? He wouldn't be used to that playing in the Italian league. So it takes time for players to settle. But I think, if you look at, Ruben yesterday against Arsenal, he only had half a squad. How many players would most people recognise on the bench yesterday? There was hardly a name that you'd recognise. The guy that we brought on, Heaven, he's only 18. We only bought him 3 weeks ago from Arsenal, And then we had Obi on there, who's only 16, I think, and he's played once for United. There was only half. I think if you look at the top 8 most expensive players that we've got in terms of salary, 4 of them are not available to Ruben. Now, if you did that with Liverpool or Manchester City, that's the cream of your half the cream of your team has gone, So I think I've seen progress.
Where have you seen that progress?
We saw a bit of a glimpse of the future, I thought. On
yesterday?
Sunday. I thought we saw a glimpse of the future, yeah. I did. Yeah.
What, in the second half, you mean?
In the second half, yeah. I thought, they were quite cohesive. You could see a bit of the game plan. And the players played the hearts out for Manchester United. They really did. And you could see it, couldn't you? You could
think
see
the
that Delict tattle. You could see the tattle that Heaven made. I mean, it really meant something to them.
So you think the recruitment from last summer will come good?
Yes. Yeah, I do.
And how do you assess...
But bear in mind, recruitment last summer, we didn't have the luxury of time to prepare for last summer, did we? Jason had been there 3 weeks. Omar had been there 3 days. We had the problem with the coach. Is it a yes or a no? So are we involving the coach and not involving the coach?
Did you involve the coach?
Sorry?
Did you involve the coach?
Yeah, we did, yeah.
So Eric signed a lot of those players last
No,
summer?
he didn't, but he was involved in the discussions and he influenced... I mean, at the end of the day, a decision on a new player or a purchase isn't a decision of one person normally, is it? It's a group of people who influence that decision one way or another. So yeah, he did have a voice, which is why there were 1 or 2 Dutch players.
Would you have sacked Eric if you'd have found another manager after the FA Cup final success? Because you were looking around Europe and scouring for a new manager.
It was too early for us to make a big decision in reality, and we hadn't been together as a team for very long. If you look at Omar, Jason, myself, Dave, we hadn't been together for very long. It was just a matter of weeks, and it's quite a big decision, isn't it? And also, it's quite difficult to, I couldn't. It was quite difficult to extract in that season when we arrived Eric's performance from the structure around him, because obviously the structure around him now is completely different.
Yeah.
So if I look today, there's a really strong relationship and a really strong support culture for Ruben with Jason. So Jason and Ruben talk to each other 2 or 3 times a day. Omar speaks to Ruben every day. Every time I go to the match, I speak to Ruben. So there's a support structure there, and he's got his coaches and the physios and the doctor and everything else. But it was quite difficult to see whether what environment Eric was operating in. Was it, in other words, was the erratic performance a function of Eric, or was it a function of the organisation? And we couldn't really get to the bottom of answering that question with sort of certainty, I suppose. We gave Eric the benefit of the doubt.
And do you regret that, or do you feel...
Yeah, it was the wrong decision. We made the wrong decision. It was an error. So yeah, I suppose in that sense I regret it. I think there were some extenuating or mitigating circumstances in having made that decision, but at the end of the day it was a wrong decision, so hands up, mea culpa on that one. Yeah.
How do you assess Ruben's first 4 or 5 months? It's obviously been tough in terms of results and performances, but how do you assess... he's very honest.
Yeah, he is honest, and I like that about him. I think Ruben has done an excellent job. I really like Ruben, and I think in the circumstances in which he arrived mid-season. Yeah. He didn't have time to train his players in the way in which he wants to play. He inherited a squad which he's had no influence on, and the squad isn't necessarily designed for the way in which he plays football. And English isn't his natural language, and he's never played in the Premier League before, and he's managing the biggest club in the world, and it's a tough place. I mean, Manchester United is a tough place.
And he's young.
There's a big one. And he's a young guy, yeah. So I think, if you take all of that into consideration, I think he's done a remarkably good job.
What parts are you referring to there when you say good job? Because obviously the results have been poor. But what are you referring to? Just generally the way in which he carries himself, or?
Yeah, I think the way... And I think what he's got out of the players that he's got available, I think he's done well with.
Do you?
I do, yeah.
I mean,
if I look at the salary bill of the squad that's available to him, that salary bill is not the salary bill of Manchester City or Liverpool.
Do you mean because of the injuries? Or what do you mean? What are you referring to the actual...
If you look at the salary bill of the players that are available to him that are not injured or not out on loan, because we've got Anthony out on loan, we've got Sancho out on loan, we've got Rashford out on loan, we've got Mason Mount hasn't really played in the last 2 seasons, we've got Luke Shaw hasn't played in the last 2 seasons. So if you modify our salary bill for the players that are not available to Ruben, then our salary bill ranks us about mid-league, second half of the table. We're sort of level with the likes of a Nottingham Forest or Everton, not a Manchester City or. So that salary bill, if you look at that salary bill, is probably about 130 million. And we're talking about Liverpool has got a salary bill of 200 and Manchester City got a salary bill of 300. So that's the squad that Ruben's playing with.